All right, welcome back. So today I decided to make a video to begin the process of explaining and maybe just critically thinking about the effects that this Planet X Nemesis system moving in could have. And I wanted to touch base on the magnetic pole, the pole reversal or polar flip, as you may have heard, and maybe some bits of evidence here and there as to why it may not be exactly what we've been told or just what scientists think. I wanted to give you my perspective on it just because I haven't seen it out there. Okay. So, over the years, you can see here, this is the line that the magnetic pole has taken over the course of recorded history. Okay. So the line's rather straight. It's rather straight and it's pretty direct, if I may say. And that's indicative of more than just a natural phenomenon. I feel as though the Earth's molten core that's creating this magnetic field isn't as predictable as a straight line. There's got to be an external force causing this straight line. And that is my theory. It's this whole Planet X and Nemesis star system that is a binary twin to our star. And I wanted to further explain it. So just pay close attention to this straight line. I may flip back to this a couple of times in the video. Just very close attention to this straight line. All right, so it's heading this direction and it's rapidly accelerating. That's a very important key here, rapid acceleration. Now, this is the proposed Planet X or Nemesis orbit. They call it Nibiru in this little illustration. I tried to find one that was simple yet effective at explaining what I'm trying to explain here. And it's not quite this simple, okay? This Planet X is not coming from the same ecliptic plane that all of our other planets orbit on. The Earth is just slightly above the ecliptic, and some other planets, vary slightly from that ecliptic plane, but it's pretty standard. It's a pretty flat plane that all of our planets orbit around or orbit around the sun. And this is just a very two-dimensional illustration, but it will help give you an idea. So this Planet X system, Nemesis, whatever you want to call it, is moving in, and it has this long elliptical orbit. It's not a circular orbit, as we see here with the inner planets and Earth in particular, which is the most important, of course. We live here. But it's this long, drawn-out period, okay? So as it comes in, it's making this sweeping pass, and it accelerates, okay? So how gravity works, just like NASA uses and SpaceX uses and Jet Propulsion Labs, whomever uses to send satellites up in space or out into far out space, they slingshot. They use gravity to slingshot the satellites in whatever direction they're planning on going. It's the same principle here as Nemesis. The Nemesis star is what I'm going to call it, and Nibiru, the planet, which is supposedly what is responsible for Earth catastrophes. As it gets closer to our star being bigger, badder, stronger, since it's the one that kind of won the tug of war in a binary star system. It got all the planets around it. Our star pulls it, and as it gets closer, gravity takes more of an effect, and it accelerates, okay? And just as of lately, our magnetic poles have begun to accelerate at a rate that is faster than we accounted for. I say we generically, scientists have accounted for. The scientists that create our navigation systems and satellite tracking and coordinates. Planes are going down. Planes are going down because their autopilot systems and their navigation systems are failing because they're just completely malfunctioned. They're going to claim that it's just a faulty part and it didn't come on a certain version of craft. BS. Do you really buy that? A multi-million-dollar craft not coming with a part that's going to make a plane crash? Come on. Anyway, I digress. Now, as this system moves in, it's coming from underneath the ecliptic. So if you think about the ecliptic, if you thought about this as being flipped horizontally to where we're kind of looking at it from the side, it's coming from underneath the Earth and underneath all of the other planets. Now, as it comes in, its gravity begins a tug of war on everything else. So it's going to start pulling planets downward. Okay? It's pulling it downward because if a large object is coming from underneath the planet, the gravity pulls. It's pulling. So now we're in a tug of war. So just a quick little aside, why do you think Antarctica has one of the most expensive and most advanced pieces of satellite technology, satellite radio technology, and telescope technology on the South Pole? It's clear. It's to observe this system, okay? And they can probably see it in the sky out there, but nonetheless. Now, what's a little bit of evidence that the Earth might already have been affected by it, might have already begun to get pulled by this Nemesis system? Well, have you noticed the moon lately? When we were growing up, we learned waning, waxing crescents, and we learned full moons. This is the standard moon phase throughout a calendar month, okay? Goes from right to left, left to right. That's how it goes. And it's always been a vertical, banana-shaped moon phase. I mean, if you start to scroll through all these images, these are all the moon phases that have been on the internet in history. That's what they are. Now, nowadays, if you look up in the night sky, you'll occasionally see something like this. Now, that's not right. I've seen it myself. I photographed it myself. That's not right. That doesn't coincide with what we know to be true, with what we know, what we've been told. It doesn't make any sense, right? Now, you may argue that the moon has shifted, or there's this or that, or whatever the case may be. I mean, you can justify it in any way that you want. You can claim that it's totally normal. It's not. For my entire life, I've been obsessed with space. I know my moon phases. I stared at the moon almost nightly as a child and even do as an adult. That's not normal. Okay? So you may think, okay, well, how does the moon get upside down? Or how does the moon turn this drastically in degrees? I mean, that's almost 90 degrees. I would argue maybe from the standard, I don't know, maybe 70 degrees, 60 degrees, 65, somewhere in that range. That's kind of my hypothesis. It isn't the moon that has changed. It's our perspective of the moon that has changed. Our position on Earth is what has moved. And this is an effect of that pulling from the Nemesis system coming inward. The Earth itself has tilted, Crazy, right? I know. The Earth's axial tilt. We've always known the Earth was at a 23.5 degree axial tilt. I guarantee you it didn't start that way. It didn't start that way. We don't have an explanation as to why the Earth has a 23.5 degree tilt. We've just always learned, oh, that's how it is. That's the great news about Earth. That's how it is. That's how we have our poles and our Arctic poles. Well, every planet has Arctic poles, people. And it's been tilted before in the past. What would cause it to tilt again? Well, this. And if you can't tell, it's been tilted downward. Now, I don't know exactly what would happen if it made it pass by again. Does it spin the Earth around like a basketball on a Harlem Globetrotter's fingertip? I don't know. I have no idea. But we've got to look at the past to anticipate the future, and we kind of got to go outside the norm to kind of understand that. And Earth isn't the only planet that has an abnormal tilt. Even in our solar system, Uranus is a perfect example. It's been flipped upside down. I mean, just upside down. And I'm sure it will flip again at some point. And I personally don't believe it has to do with our magnetic pole reversal. I actually hypothesize that the magnetic poles themselves are not moving. It's actually the physical poles. Okay, and to help you better understand what I'm talking about here, the Earth has a liquid core. And if you think of that liquid core, it's to the shape of its container, aka the Earth's mantle and the crust, the whole Earth itself, basically. And if the Earth's crust and the mantle tilts and it shifts, does the liquid shift with it, or does it stay north and south? So the magnetic pole has a north and a south, and the poles themselves don't move. That magnetic north and south, it must stay magnetic north and magnetic south. It must. However, the physical location on the surface of the Earth of that magnetic north and south is shifting because of the physical movement of the Earth. So let me better help you visualize a little bit. I'm not any type of graphic designer, so I can't go and make a neat little illustration here. Think of a water balloon, okay? And if you were to fill that water balloon to the top just like this, look where that tie is. It's at the top. Now, you would argue that it's gravity keeping the water down, keeping the water from the top of the balloon. But what if the balloon was full? Okay, so turn the balloon to the side, the water still stays level. No matter which way you turn this tie here, the water is going to stay level here. So if this balloon was filled all the way up, just like our Earth's core, if it was completely full, and the Earth's crust and mantle shifted, right? That shifted. Does the liquid in the Earth shift with it, or does it just slide along the inside and keep that magnetic north and south? I don't know, frankly, but I feel as though that's more probable than the magnetism of the Earth's field just deciding to flip. Okay. Maybe it's a little bit of both, because other planets have magnetism, and we know magnets, extremely interact with one another. If you got two very strong magnets near each other, they're either going to attract to one another in a very extreme fashion or repel from one another in a very extreme fashion. So maybe it is a combination of both aspects. Now, that is what I'm thinking is going on here. Okay. Our perspective from the Earth is showing an upside down moon, but it's the Earth itself that has moved, because as this Nemesis system moves in, it's pulling the Earth downward. Am I claiming that we're at a different tilt than 23.5 degrees? I believe so. It's my hypothesis that it is. Yes. That would explain the changes in weather patterns, the severe changes in weather patterns, the extreme changes in weather patterns. We have flooding and snow in the deserts. We have record snow in places where we should have record heat if global warming existed. We have, I live in California, and we've already had, in the last 3 months of this year, I believe over 2 times the annual rainfall of last year. And it's only the beginning of April. And it's only going to continue, because think about latitude and longitude, because the sun hasn't moved, right? The sun hasn't moved. That thing is strong. It's staying steady, right? Because think about this Nemesis system. The Nemesis system itself orbits around it, because our sun is so much bigger and has much more influence with gravity. Now, if you think about that, the implications are pretty high here. Because if a physical location on Earth, latitude and longitude, is different, then we're subject to different climates. So, for example, I live in California. If there was a, let's say, 60-degree tilt to the Earth's axis, that would put me in Brazil, basically, the climate of Brazil. Because Brazil lies about, I believe, 30 to 40 degrees below the equator. And I'm about 30 to 35 degrees above the equator. 60 degrees tilt, that's where I am. More rainfall. That would make sense. It would just make sense. So I'm interested to see what the next few years have to bring, and what actually comes to light here, because the implications can be quite massive, and what it can do to the Earth following its nearest pass, if the stars align, pun intended, I guess. So in my next video, I will be touching base on ice ages. Ice ages are something that are unexplained. Ice ages are something that scientists can't quite pinpoint as to being the cause of. They're starting to kind of put some puzzle pieces together, but I wanted to further explain my hypothesis with that, and it all surrounds the Nemesis system.